I skipped figure 39 because it won't seem relevant without the extensive text from the book. It's also nonlinear with dozens of paths through it and no single destination. This video ends using a similar version with the most logical single path between disciplines. You may have seen loops involving the scientific method. There's also loops for the engineering method that aren't as consistent. This is my attempt at organizing the sequence into fewer, yet more thorough steps to make it more compatible with art. This requires terms with broader usage than the science terms. It starts with the acronym TEOR. Theorizing is broader than hypothesizing because the latter requires falsifiability. In the book, E stands for the experimental process, but it could also mean exploring. Exploring is slightly broader than experimenting because the latter is more associated with a hypothesis. The last two letters, O and R, are in support of the first two in reverse order. Observation of data is in support of experiments. Recognition of patterns is in support of both concluding and, more importantly, theorizing. In Figure 40a, every conclusion is based on a conceptual and sometimes creative theory. That theory gets explored in an experimental process that is mostly technical. The data is first observed physically and technically, then pattern recognition occurs in the mind through mostly inductive reasoning. Identifying that pattern is ultimately based on a more fundamental or newer epistemic theory. The process continues through deductive reasoning on the experimental side. Each theory raises new questions to explore physically and technically in an endless loop of inductive and deductive reasoning. Concluding starts externally with observation and ends internally with the theory of what you are seeing on the inductive, specific to general, side of what I call the conclusion axis. Pattern recognition bridges the external and the internal. Similarly, research starts externally with exploring and experimenting and ends internally with pattern recognition on the bottom side of what I call the research axis. Observation bridges the external and the internal in this case. There are miniature versions of this loop in between each step in the loop. In theory, this behavior can infinitely scale down in a fractal recursive pattern, but I only scaled down one level in Figure 40 to show where minor and secondary disciplines fit in. The colors used in 40a coincide with disciplines. 40b is a transition between the four major core disciplines. Minor core disciplines and secondary disciplines apply between these steps. Design, engineering, and prescriptive technophilosophy occur in the art to technology transition. Formal science and descriptive technophilosophy support both the technology to natural science observation and the natural science conclusions based on perception in the domain of social science. General philosophy supports the transition from social science observation to artistic intentions. In the book, I don't use the discipline symbols at the nodes. Instead, I only use two elements that coincide with nodes in Figure 40a. But since I use letters in place of the elements in the book, this video version is Figure 40b-ish. It explains how the disciplines are interconnected, but with more dynamic sequence than the skipped Figure 39. Figure 39 is the only figure skipped in Chapter 3, but it's a smaller chapter at less than half the size of Chapter 2, where 3 figures were skipped. There's 2 more figures in this chapter, with the last one in 10 parts. I hope you are looking forward to it. Please leave constructive feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching.